All right, it's good afternoon here. Good morning over there to you. We're on call with Khazm. Sam Matla is the man behind Khazm, a New Zealand progressive trance producer, and he's also the founder of EDMprod.com. How you doing today, man?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I'm good.
Awesome.
So, how's the music scene in New Zealand?
To be honest, it's pretty good. Like, we've got some good artists over here. It is more of a bass music scene, so there's a lot of drum and bass and electro and that kind of stuff. But nah, that's pretty cool.
Is that something that you're into? Do you participate in that at all, or do you just stick mostly to trance?
So obviously, like, trance and progressive are, I love them the most. But no, I certainly like that that scene. In terms of participation, I'm known as a producer, maybe, but as a DJ, probably not. I'm not fully in there at the moment, but it's cool.
Is that something that you feel like has influenced your sound at all, or is it just something that you're happy is going on around you?
I think in terms of influence, like, yeah, it plays some part because a lot of my producer buddies, they do produce bass music, so there's that sort of pressure to not conform, but lean that way, I suppose you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off producing bass music as well, so maybe that has something to play. But I wouldn't call my sound, electro or dirty necessarily.
Sure.
I'm not sure.
And how did you first get into electronic dance music?
Oh, wow. So I think it must have been 4 or 5 years ago. I downloaded a compilation. I think it was called Top 100 Trance and Techno Songs.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was old stuff, like 90s sort of disco club. And I loved it. Like, I found it awesome. And I think one day I just typed in to Google how to make electronic music. Sort of progressed from there.
So how long did it take you from just listening to the music to deciding I want to make this?
Well, I think it was maybe a couple of months, and then I downloaded FL Studio, and I spent maybe a couple of months, mucking around with it, not really caring about making music, but just learning it. Took about a year and a half off. I don't know why. I came back to it full force and just, did it in my spare time, come home from school, work on music.
Okay.
It's been like that ever since, I suppose.
Cool. And how long ago was that you took the break and then came back like full force?
I don't know exactly. I'd say it would be about 3 years, maybe.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Do you still remember your first production at all?
Oh, first one. Do you mean first full song or first like?
Let's go with both. Do you remember like the very first thing you tried to make in Fruity Loops, and then do you remember the first like full on track that you felt you finished?
Yeah. Okay. First sort of thing I made. I watched a tutorial on YouTube. I can't remember what one it was or anything, but I made an 8-bar loop of, that sort of rave trance, like anime kind of stuff.
Yeah, like you mean like more like hard style kind of stuff?
Yeah, it was like a 20-second loop of that, and it sounded horrible because I remember I remember finding it like a year ago on my computer somewhere, and brought me to tears. The first full song I made, it was still bad, not as bad as the loop, and I think I actually did like one vocal line in it, and I can't sing at all. I think I auto-tuned it like to the max, and it was bad. But like, it's cool to look back on that kind of stuff as a producer. I'm sure a lot of people listening know that, and see how you progress, and that's good motivation, I think.
Yeah.
See how far you've come.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Do you feel like your tastes have changed in music since then? Do you feel that the music that you strive to make is of a different style? I guess what I'm asking is, how much do you feel like trance and progressive trance have changed since you started making music?
Okay. So I think when I started, like most of the stuff I listened to was dubstep and, like the old school kind of trance. And now, obviously, it's progressed and it's become more club influenced, you could say, to some extent. So that has definitely influenced it. I think like when I make music, it's kind of hard to find that balance between making it danceable. I don't know if that's a word, and keeping the musical element, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So you can make an ambient track which won't do anything in the club, or you can make a full-on club track which will sound awesome on the dance floor, but if you want to fall asleep or you want to just listen to it at home, it's not as enjoyable. So I think I try to find the balance between that.
And
maybe not successfully, but yeah.
when you do that, when you're listening, are there elements that you feel like are essential to either one? Like are there club elements that you feel like you have to put in if you want to make it dancey, and are there things that you have to take out if you want to keep it sort of more ambient?
So I was actually writing an ebook on this, but I don't know if it would be finished. In terms of like making it danceable and the club sort of orientated track, tension and release, incredibly important, because you need people to, you need their energy and emotions to be affected. I think that's a really important thing, especially for new producers to think about, is building tension in your song and keeping that energy up the whole time. And also groove. Like a lot of tracks are just like a 4/4 kick is fine, but you want to have, maybe a bit of swing in some tracks, or if you want a straight groove, for example, uplifting trance, there's not much swing or groove in that. But I suppose it depends on what you're going for. But definitely tension and release. And maybe if you're trying to make it more soft for listening, at home, I suppose having, what's the word? Dynamics, and keep it from being boring. So like, you want something to happen every 4 to 8 bars. Some tracks, especially techno and tech house, a lot of people may find it hard to listen to, by themselves, because it's just this constant. It might have 16, 32 bars before anything changes. Any little, incidental little effect comes in, which can be kind of boring if you're not
right. If you're not
if
you're not ready to listen to all those little subtleties. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if back to tension and release things, I think that's, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
What are like maybe three quick go-tos? Do you have like 3 quick go-tos that you just feel like, all right, this needs some tension, and then like what's like the first thing you check for to say like, all right, this part needs more tension. Here's something I can do.
Right. So when I look at tension, I sort of look at it in 2 parts. So I think macro tension and micro tension. So macro tension would be your big build-up after the breakdown, for example. And normally in that, I would have some sort of, quite a lot of automation, maybe some high-passing automated reverb or delay, snare rolls, that kind of thing. And some people, they have really basic build-ups, and that's fine. Whatever works. In terms of, the tension during the song, normally taking, and this is a common thing, most people have heard it, taking, a kick out at the end of 8 bars, or 4 kicks out at the end of 16, just to introduce a new section. And another thing to think about is, when thinking about tension and release, is push and pull. So you might have, or pull and push, sorry. You might have a white noise riser or something at the end of 8 bars going towards the next section, and that would be your pull. And then you have say a crash cymbal or a noise, downlift as your push, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I think about it.
Okay. Let's switch gears real quick.
Yep.
So you write a lot of tutorials. You said you're working on an ebook, and you run the website EDMprod. How did that start, and what sort of influenced you to consider to do those things?
Right. So since the age of 14, I'm 18 now. I was into blogging and doing stuff on the internet, I suppose. And I started a skateboarding blog because that's what I was into at the time.
Okay.
And that failed pretty bad, but it was fun. Before starting EDMprod, I ran another blog about productivity, which I don't know why I did it. It was kind of boring. And I thought around June, I think, this year, I love music. I love writing about it. I love teaching it. Why don't I do this? Like, why don't I start this? That's sort of how it started. And it's been going good so far. And I have to thank Reddit for that, the EDM production sub. Wow, like those guys are awesome.
Yeah. I guess what are your goals for the website and for your writing?
Right. I think ultimately I'd love to start a physical school down in New Zealand because there's not really much around here. But for the website, I suppose just building it, gaining a bigger audience, and I suppose providing value and more in-depth things. At the moment, I'm doing articles, which are fine, but I'd love to get into like sort of courses and like multi-part guides and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Because I think they're really, really helpful.
Cool. Well, I think we have similar goals in what we're striving for in doing it. In me doing this talk show and for you and your website. And
definitely,
I think that it's really important that the process is taught. And so I totally would support what you're doing. I think it's really good. And for anybody listening who doesn't know about EDMprod, it's a great website because it doesn't just focus on how to copy someone else to be a good producer.
Yeah.
It copies on, it talks about what it takes to not copy, but to, internally learn and teach yourself the basics to, come up with things that are not a copy of other people, so that you're really producing quality work.
Just on that whole copy thing, I'm sure I've done a couple of tutorials that are sort of along those lines, but the problem I have is, there's a lot of tutorials out there on YouTube that are just basically a repeat of what someone else has said. So, you can, even if you're not good at production, you can watch a YouTube video, take all the notes, make your own tutorial on the exact same sound, for example, how to make a Zomboy bass. And, you just say, turn the cutoff to 11 o'clock, so on, so on, so on. If you're watching that as a new producer and you have no idea what the cutoff knob does, you have no idea what an oscillator is, are you really learning, or are you just, copying? Like, I think as a new producer, it's important to learn the fundamentals first and then really understand. Now, of course, I can't just teach every tutorial and explain what a cutoff, cutoff knob does on a filter every time. But I don't know, it's a tough one. But there is some stuff out there that is just blatant copy. Yeah. And I don't know if that helps or not.
No, yeah, I mean, I think it's a tricky line to walk, and I definitely would never blame anybody for doing that. It's just an easy pitfall to fall into, and it's easy, and I'm sure that I did it, when I was first starting out. Like, oh yeah, that's really cool. That's like a really cool pluck sound. I want to know how to make that, and then I didn't,
for sure. Yeah.
And so it just takes a lot of time, and I guess I don't know. I guess that's like the takeaway from that. So anyway, I'm sorry, I sort of got us derailed. All right, so let's go back to your production then. So walk me through your process then. Like you're sitting down. Let's say you're working on an original track. Where do you get your inspiration? Do you just like take walks through the New Zealand countryside, or?
You know, funnily enough, sometimes I do, and I find that helps a lot. But honestly, when it comes to my own productions, like it is so messy in terms of how I start, where I get my inspiration. Sometimes it's like literally forcing myself to produce, and I know that some people say that it's a bad thing to do. You should let creativity flow, but you know, sometimes that creativity doesn't flow for months. So I don't know. Starting the track, 9 times out of 10, it starts with the drums. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm a drummer. Like I played drums for 8 years before getting into
Okay,
electronic music production.
it's got to help. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Start with the drums and get them sounding solid, and then go to the bass.
How do you?
It's hard.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's hard. I think it's hard to start with the drums and bass because you know they're hard to get mixed properly. But I think once you have them down solid, you know, it's a lot easier to add the accompanying and surrounding elements.
Okay, so when you do that for like your drums, for example,
Yep.
how do you treat them? Are you like layering drum samples? Are you making your own drum samples, or?
Again, it's a bit of a mess. I sort of do everything at once. So I normally layer 2 kicks for starters. Sometimes I'll just use one sample if it works. If it doesn't, I'll normally layer them. Sometimes 3 kicks, but normally just 2. So I did do a quick tutorial on this, but you know, you get the attack or transient of one and the tail of another, and that works quite well. And then, you know, I'll probably have a couple of claps, and I think layering claps is like incredibly fun,
Okay.
and I do it all the time.
How many claps do you layer at a time?
A couple, like 3 or 4 maybe, but I normally do it so if I've got a 4-bar loop, I won't have this one, you know, layered clap sound hitting on every single second and fourth beat. I might have 2 of the claps hitting on the second beat, and then that extra 3rd clap on the 4th beat, and so on, to add a bit of variation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and when
And
you
then,
go ahead.
oh, sorry. Hi-hats I find quite hard. I've always struggled with them, especially in trance music, to get that nice flow. But I find that side chaining your hi-hat channels, if you've got maybe 3 or 4, side chaining them real subtle to the kick makes it pump quite nice, which helps a lot.
Cool. So for your hi-hats and your claps, if you're layering them, are you like EQing so that one clap sits higher in the frequency than the other, or are you doing it so that you hear the like initial attack of one clap, but then you hear sort of the, you know, the release and sustain of a different one?
Right. I think at the moment I do it by ear. So yes, I will EQ them. I will sometimes adjust the, you know, amplitude envelope attacks on, but ultimately it comes down to whether it sounds good or not. You can stick 2 claps on top of each other and they might sound perfect. You don't need to do any EQing, as long as they're not phasing, because it's pretty easy for claps to phase, you know, taking up the same frequency range.
Sure.
But it comes down to ear, and that's something that, you know, comes over time, I suppose. So just practice, maybe.
Okay. Are you still using Fruity Loops for production?
At the moment, I can't decide between. I sort of work on, you know, a track in Ableton, FL Studio. I find that with Ableton, it's a lot easier to get ideas down faster. So I'll work in session view first and just get some loops going. FL Studio I've used for most of my, you know, time producing, so it's just the workflows in general is a lot faster. But if I'm collaborating with someone who's using Ableton, don't have a problem with that. I use Ableton, so on. But mostly FL Studio, I would say.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so let's say you've got your drums arranged.
Yep.
and then you make a bass line. How do you? I mean, all of your tracks sound. I mean, obviously very professional.
Yep.
How do you know when you're done with your drums and your bass line that that you've sort of built the framework for a track to sit on top of it? And how do you know how much room to leave? You know, because sometimes I'll make
Yeah.
like I'll make like a bass line and a kick, and then I'll say like, all right, great, I'm gonna build on top of this, and then I realize that I didn't really leave that much room for the rest of the track, and that's why the bass line sounded so good. But then when I try to make room for it, then the bass line just like whimpers away and sounds sad. So
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah. So first of all, I wouldn't advise anyone to necessarily start a track this way. It works for me, but there's no sort of proper way to do that. It's weird starting with a kick or drums and bass line first, because often you might feel that, like I personally feel that my bass line might not be strong enough. In reality, it is, especially when you add the surrounding elements, synths and all that. When you add them, your bass line works fine. But when it's just drums and bass, it might sound a little bit weak. And like you said, you're tempted to bring it up more or make it more powerful. And when you do that and you add all the other stuff, it just doesn't fit. But once I do my drums and bass, I normally sort of arrange in a way. So I'll do the basic structure, breakdowns, build-ups, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Plan it all out, and then start adding all my melodic stuff with maybe just a piano or just a pad, like real basic sounds, because I don't want to... it's so easy to get stuck into sound design, spend 4 hours on a single synth patch and not really achieve anything.
Yeah.
It's so easy. So one thing that helps me is separating those two, getting the musical stuff down first, and then working on the sound design after, and then the mixing after that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's quite logical.
Yeah, that sounds good. So then when you go to mix at the very end, like you've got your structure down, you're happy with it. What do you start with? How do you mix down?
So I mix as I go a little bit, because you can't really help it sometimes. I mean, if you've got something that sounds too loud, you're going to turn it down. If you need to EQ out the low end, you need to do it. You're just going to do that straight away. But at the end, I do a final mix down, and I'll start with the kick. First the kick and the bass, normally the sub bass, because in my opinion, they're the most important two elements of a track and the hardest to get right. Kick and sub bass, move on to the percussion, and then I'll go in order of importance. So if I have a vocal, I'll mix that second. Main synth lead, I'll mix that, and so on. And maybe the effects last. And I don't use too many effects in terms of distortion and all that kind of stuff. There are some things that I really just don't know how to use. Multi-band distortion probably being one of them. I know how it works in theory, but I'd never use it in a track. But EQ and compression, and quite a lot of reverb. Yeah.
Okay. For compression, some guys, they compress everything just till there's like almost nothing, no dynamic space. Do you do that, or you just do like a lot of layers? How do you get your stuff to sound so tight?
You'll notice that if you play my tracks compared to like a commercial song, they'll be quite a lot quieter. One reason for that is because I don't attempt to master my stuff properly. I'll use a limiter, but that's about it. I like dynamics personally. I don't have anything. There are some tracks like the Beatport, dare I say it, progressive house, quote in quotes, club tracks that are compressed like just a sausage waveform.
Sure.
But it works. It works for that kind of style, I think.
Yeah.
If you're doing something that requires dynamics like trance, or proper progressive house, then
Yeah,
I think dynamics are important. And, I don't know. I'm sort of, I have two schools of thought about it, to be honest.
sure. That's
Works in some cases.
no, it's yeah, it's hard to not be really torn about it.
Mm.
So, but yeah, no, I respect that. I respect that a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well let's talk about some of your releases. You've got loads of stuff on your SoundCloud, and I'll post that in the description for all this stuff. You've got a ton of free downloads, really cool
Yeah.
stuff. You've got a bunch of remixes that you've put out on Sorcery.
Yeah, yeah.
So, how did you make that transition? So you're putting out all this free stuff, you're making a lot of quality
Right.
stuff, and then all of a sudden it seems like you become very involved with Sorcery, and
Yeah.
a bunch of your stuff's getting remixed, and or rather you're doing a bunch of remixes, and some of your originals
Yeah,
are on
yeah.
there. So how did you make that transition?
So first of all, a lot of the stuff on my SoundCloud I don't like anymore.
Okay.
But I'll leave it up there.
Fair
As
enough.
as a producer, you know what I mean.
Sure, sure,
Like
sure.
months later after finishing a track, it's like, oh gosh. But I think the reason I did free downloads is because I realized there was no money in this.
Yeah.
As being someone of my, level of exposure, I suppose you could say. And I think that it must have been about 2 years after I started producing. I was still making dubstep at the time. I sent my stuff off to labels, being so naive, pretty young, and it was every young producer's dream to get something signed on a label.
Uh-huh.
They didn't listen to it, and in fact, I think they sent me a message back saying like "Dream on," or something along those lines.
geez,
So
that's harsh.
I was just like, yeah, it was necessary though. So I just released free downloads for a while, made a track that I thought was really good, and I sent it off to a few labels. They didn't like it. I had a friend on Facebook called Adelaide, and she released a track on Sorcery, so I thought I'd give that a go. And funny thing was, I put this track up for free download at the same time. It got 1 or 2 downloads. Next morning, got an email from Sorcery Records saying, we want to sign this. And I was like, oh gosh. Took it off SoundCloud so quick. And it got signed, 2 remixes, and got released about half a year later. But I don't like it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I don't know, they just contacted me to do a few more remixes. And I've got some stuff in the works now. Collaboration with Monoverse, like I told you before, and another vocal track that I'm not sure what's happening at the moment, but it should be out soon. Yeah.
That's exciting. So you didn't actually your first signed track, you didn't actually send in.
I sent in a demo to Sorcery, but I didn't expect anything of it.
Oh, I see.
I still don't know why they signed it. Like, looking back, it wasn't a great track, but I don't know. They gave me a chance, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's cool though. And you've had a good experience with doing some remixes for them and stuff then?
Yeah, they're a great label, and I would recommend them to trance producers. I think they release some prog house stuff as well. But if you think you're ready to get signed, I would definitely contact them because they're like nice people, real cool.
Very cool. Very cool. And you said you have some stuff coming out. So what else is in the future for Khazm then?
Yeah, I think at the moment I'm trying to really find or develop my style, because you'll notice that, especially on my SoundCloud, these tracks are very diverse.
Yeah.
You can listen to one. For example, my Skies of Fury remix compared to Karth, completely different. But
Yeah.
I don't know, because I sit down and produce what I feel like.
Yeah.
But I think developing my style, I've got a sound in my head that I really like and I want to get. But it's just a matter of time. And yeah, I don't know. I think I'll still have free downloads for sure. But I'm looking at branching out in terms of labels and getting some stuff out there.
I think you could, man. I mean, you've got a bunch of different styles. You're kind of all over the place. I think that's the mark in my mind of a good producer, though. Somebody who can really vary what they're doing and sit down and
Right.
and not be, not make these like copy and pasted,
Yeah.
variations of one track that they've made. So I think that's cool, man.
Just a note for producers out there who are maybe a bit newer. I would, like strongly recommend to try out a different genre, like maybe something completely different from what you produce, because you learn so much. Like, I think I made a tech house track once, and it was insanely hard to get that groove and vibe. You take that stuff you learn from producing whatever genre it is back to your own preferred kind of style, and it influences it so much. I think that's a really good way to develop your own sound. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Yeah, and there's a bunch of opportunities out there. I mean, you can just type in like remix competitions and try remixing tracks that wouldn't fit your style at all.
Yeah,
and there's
definitely.
there's Reddit EDM production has got like sample pack and remix or not and genre competitions that they hold monthly, and so those are also good things you can do. So I think that's a very good suggestion, man. Yeah.
No worries.
Well, do you have anything else you want to add at all?
Just keep producing, everybody. Listen to a lot of music. Learn as much as you can.
How many hours do you put in a week, would you say?
Less than I'd like to. With EDMprod, I'm working on that most of the day. But I would, I always try to get in at least 1 hour per day. Even if it's just staring at FL Studio and just doing nothing, like something to do with music every day. It helps a lot.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man.
Sweet.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. I think this has been awesome.
Oh, it's fun.
And I think we diverged from the format a little bit today, but
not a problem at all.
I think it's all good stuff. Thank you so much for your time, man.
That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good one. Bye.
Sweet. See ya.